AI has been promising a lot for a long time and not delivering. In this particular case, though, this is actually pretty much a huge leap forward. You have a tendency to project intelligence onto almost everything. I'm Tom Reamy, author of Deep Text. If you can checkmate, you checkmate. That's the end of the game. The whole idea behind GenAI is that it's used to predict the next word. And that is really the heart of the technology. It's basically type ahead on steroids. The difference between that and what you find like in your Word document as you're typing along is two key differences: scale and transformers. So scale, you need a huge number of sample training documents to get a GenAI to work well. Small language models, they actually do have a place in the enterprise, but by themselves don't give you the kind of intelligent seeming results that you get from GenAI. So scale is one. I mean, it's not looking at words. It's looking it transforms everything into tokens, and tokens might be 4 to 7 characters or something, depending on the approach and the application. So it's the scale with those transformers that gives GenAI its power. There's a number of really major drawbacks. So hallucination is probably the single biggest problem with trying to apply GenAI to the enterprise to actually and they get business value out of it. If you can't trust that it's not going to just make something up, it gets very, very difficult to build something on top of it. The second one is lack of transparency. You just know that if you give it more content, it tends to get better. If you add certain kinds of guidelines, it can follow those. The third, the amount and quality of data that you need to train these things. It's gigantic. So most enterprises can't afford to build their own large language model. Part of that is the quality of the data. One of the reasons that you get hallucinations is you got a lot of bad content that's being scraped up and used as part of the large language model. Security issues. So the way you interact, of course, with a Gen AI is with prompts. You have the whole field of prompt engineering that's grown up. The prompts, the output depends on how good your prompts are. And so that's one issue. But the security issue is that very clever but not very nice people have figured out various ways to write prompts that are called jailbreaks, which they are designed to get the Gen AI to break its own rules. So it's not like a single prompt, but a whole series of prompts. You give it a series of prompts, and you can get it to break its own rules and start talking about tell you how to, in fact, to build a weapon of mass destruction. In the enterprise, the problem is that the vocabulary that large language models are based on is public vocabulary. And we've seen for years that the language inside the enterprise is very different from public content and vocabulary. What people are doing is fine-tuning large language models with enterprise content, which can be pretty costly and also tends to run into some accuracy issues. When people talk about Gen AI, they have a tendency to project intelligence onto almost everything. Gen AI doesn't understand anything. It doesn't understand human language. It mimics it. For example, there's no common sense. There's no notion of causality. Another issue is that Gen AI tends to create the most popular answer. Because if you've got an algorithm that predicts the next word, it's going to predict the most likely next word, which is going to be the most popular answer. That's not necessarily the best answer. So most writings coming out of Gen AI tend to be somewhat superficial and stereotypical writings. You can pretty much tell very often if something's written by a Gen AI because it is not very specific. Gen AI has a real problem with complexity. Regular AI can produce chess capability that's well beyond the capability of any human being. In this case, it was asking GenAI to talk about chess. And one of the questions it asked, it gave it like a fool's mate, which it didn't find. The experimenters gave it a situation where one of the next moves would be checkmate. And it asked GenAI, so should we give checkmate on this next move? And it came back with this really long, involved answer saying, well, you should take into account other factors and various factors of how open the boards are and so forth and so on. And of course, the answer is no. If you can checkmate, you checkmate, and that's the end of the game. So they don't understand those kinds of systems.
When working with generative AI, one of the things that good research has is replicability. How well can you replicate your outcomes to predict future outcomes? And with generative AI mimicking human language, it's not necessarily going to produce reliable answers to even the same prompt, period over period, or user across user. And that's one of the reasons that we strongly recommend pairing text analytics with any of your solutions, because you can go back to the framework. What was used to get this answer? How did we find that answer? And it should be the same consistently as long as the inputs are the same. It could be dynamic. It can evolve as the data going into it changes. But overall, the methodology should be consistent in order to uphold the integrity of the research that you're doing.
How do we fix all that with text analytics? What do you get if you add text analytics to GenAI? And the simple answer is you get a dramatic increase in accuracy. So how do you add text analytics to GenAI or large language models? One, use text analytics to categorize and tag all of your enterprise documents and incorporate that into a large language model. And so it will be more reflective of enterprise content than just a standard large language model. You can use it to analyze the output and fix problems with the output. You can build rules that, for example, will be much more accurately tag things that are being made up, that are hallucinations, that don't fit in. More and more content is being generated by GenAI. And so instead of feeding it good content from humans, it's content from another GenAI. And if you do that often enough, what you get is extremely bad results. GenAI trained on GenAI content is even more limited than GenAI based on human. Text analytics is precision, AI is recall. Put the two together and you get good results.